Welcome back. My name is Stephanie Austin, and in this session we'll talk about risk treatment in the infrastructure investment project cycle. Now you've seen this figure before. We're looking at the infrastructure investment project cycle and all of its phases, and you'll see down below there are each of the 4 climate proofing steps. Right now we're talking specifically about the risk treatment step. So let's look at how risk treatment looks different in each of these project cycle phases. So during the sector policy plans and regulations phase, risk treatment may include identifying and selecting measures to adjust plans and policies, such as indicators or activities, according to the identified risks. In the project identification phase, climate risk treatment may look like selecting the most appropriate project site or identifying and selecting measures that enhance and ensure resilience framing for the project development. In the project preparation phase, risk treatment may mean identifying and selecting measures for climate resilient budgeting, design, and operation and maintenance of the infrastructure investment. In the resource mobilization phase, risk treatment may mean climate resilient insurance policy, covering climate risks and noting the monetary loss that has been identified. In the construction phase, risk treatment may include the development of standard operating procedures, or in other words, SOPs, for the construction site with regard to warning and immediate response options to protect assets and people in case of climate-related extreme events. And lastly, in the operation maintenance phase, in case changes in risk are identified, risk treatment may mean identification and selection of measures to increase the resilience of the project. So let's drill into the risk treatment step during the project identification phase for a hydropower infrastructure investment. Now, the overarching objective during this phase may be to select an adequate project site. So the aim of risk treatment during this phase is then to identify the different adaptation options that increase the resilience at different project sites. This may be part of a pre-feasibility study or reconnaissance study to identify potential project sites. Ideally, it should be possible to assess the different adaptation options' potential for increasing the resilience and flexibility of each of the different project sites. So you would start by using the identified risk levels for each of the alternative project sites from the risk assessment step into the overall assessment of these project alternatives. You'll want to decide which of the alternative sites need to consider climate change based on the risk assessment that you'll have done in a previous step. You'll then identify the project performance characteristics that could potentially be affected by climate change based on the risk assessment. So the performance criteria are likely to be related to the main functions of the hydropower infrastructure. So that means the generation, safety, environment, and supply functions. Based on the risks identified, you would then identify a list of potential adaptation options that increase resilience at each of the different project sites. Adaptation options could be structural and/or functional measures. So for example, as we see on the slide, they could include options for safety design change, such as increased spillway capacity, or there's a number of ecosystem-based adaptation options, such as river remeandering, floodplain widening, green embankment, riparian planting, or wetland reforestation. You would then assess the adaptation options identified and select potential options for each of the sites that you're considering for your project. This compilation of information for each site can contribute to a pre-feasibility study or reconnaissance study and ultimately support the site selection decision-making process. So at this project identification phase, you can explore these issues in a general way, but in the project preparation phase, you would need to narrow your focus to more specific components. So this has just been a very quick example of what risk treatment could look like in the project identification phase. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session.